Hello and welcome everyone to this month's Insight Jam session. Very excited. It's December 6th today, end of 2024. We're about to kick into 2025. But before that happens, next week, we have Insight Jam Live, which is over 25 sessions, expert-led panels, etc. So you might want to keep an eye open for that, sign up, and get yourself set up for 2025. So let's talk about what we're going to cover today. The provocative title, to succeed in 2025, data engineers need to become more lazy. Lazy? Does that make any sense? Well, I always like guys like Bill Gates and have been successful. And let's see what he had to say when he's addresses a difficult or complex challenge. He says, I always like to choose a lazy person to do a hard job because a lazy person will find the easy way to do it. Now, Gates' advice kind of seems counterintuitive when you think of the difficult and complex challenges that data engineers face. That is until you consider these recent advancements in AI-enabled data engineering tools. So that's what we're going to really focus on today, what those tools are, how you can take advantage of them, particularly as you plan for the coming year. We all understand the challenge: data volumes, diversity, distribution, user demand. Expectations are very high to streamline data flows, optimize performance, reduce costs, implement next-gen technologies. I mean, the data engineers are really under siege, and failure is not an option. So can these AI-enabled data engineering tools come to the rescue? I mean, we have so many things to do. We need observability, pipeline development, data quality, resource allocation, workload management, query optimization, cost management. The list goes on, but the capabilities are rising in all of those areas. So does it make sense to follow Gates' advice and take the easy route using these tools? Not only will this help complete Gates' hard job, and it'll do it sooner and more efficiently, but I think if you use these tools successfully, you'll free up data engineering time to work on other activities that are essential. So what's the art of the possible? As a leader in data engineering, you really need to be thinking about, in your 2025 plans, what new capabilities you can take on to help succeed, and to help you identify the possibilities and talk about successes that they've seen in their field activities. We've brought together 3 experts. And let me introduce each one, and we'll let them introduce themselves, actually. Barzan, why don't we start with you? You're the CEO and co-founder of Kibo. Tell us a little bit about your background. Tell us a little about Kibo and what you do there.
Sure, yeah, I'm a founder and CEO at Kibo. Before Kibo, I was in academia. I was a professor in computer science at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, and prior to that, I was at MIT, and before that, I was at UC Berkeley and UCLA. So my biggest career achievement has been moving from warmer places gradually to colder weather. But I would sum up the last 2 decades of my career to be basically at the intersection of machine learning and database systems, essentially how we can leverage AI to build smarter data systems. So the context of this conversation is the latest spin-off from our research. It's a company called Kibo, which is, I'll tell you more about it later, but in a nutshell, we're a data learning platform that learns from how users and applications interact with their data in the cloud. And then we use that to provide visibility and automation and observability to data teams so they can spend less time worrying about running their infrastructure and more time growing their business.
Thanks, Barzan. Kyle, tell us about you and Big Eye.
Yeah, hi Robert. Thanks for having me on. So my name's Kyle Kerwin, co-founder of Big Eye. I started my career as a data scientist. I was at Uber for a number of years on several different data science teams there, and then I got into working on data management tools for my peers and found that I actually liked that more, building things that helped all my peers get their work done faster and better. So I had a team there that built a number of data management tools internally, and then a few years ago left to start Big Eye. And Big Eye specifically focuses within data management on data observability. And so we primarily help enterprises keep data pipelines reliable, prevent data quality issues, make sure that their analytics are accurate.
Great. Thank you, Kyle. Vinayak Mitty, you go by Mitty. Tell us about you, PPLSI, and what you do there.
Yeah, thanks, Robert, and thanks, Inside Jam. My name is Mitty, and I work for a company called Legal Shield, prepaid legal services. Our product is Legal Shield. We are basically a subscription service for subscription company for legal services. We provide connect our customers with lawyers for hours worth of lawyer fees. You can basically have a lawyer on retainer for a year almost. My career started off in mechanical engineering. I worked for Deloitte and Brooks Brothers. And then I moved into data. I run the data teams at Legal Shield right now. Everything from analytics to data engineering to machine learning and AI. So I also have a PhD in data and machine learning. So I'm a data geek, and this is in my wheelhouse.
Well, that's great. So in some ways, you're really a user of these data engineering tools and capabilities. So it'll be great to have that perspective along with Kyle and Barzan, providing from the vendor perspective and the innovations that they're seeing in the marketplace. Fantastic. Well, let's start with the big picture. And maybe we should start with you, Mitty. What do you see driving these demand for the data engineering tools, particularly the AI-enabled data engineering tools? What's the pressures are you facing running a data engineering team, and what kinds of things, and why are you thinking about these problems, and what are you trying to do?
Yeah, I mean, this whole cycle of AI-driven, technology enablement really kicked off with the technological breakthroughs in LLMs in 2022, right, with OpenAI launching ChatGPT. But there's always been a lot of demand for several years now. We've had such an influx of high fidelity data like videos and AR and VR and tons of data on social media and everywhere. So every company is a data company now. So there's always been a push to do more. Us on the data teams have been fighting for companies to be more data driven. Looks like we won the fight. Then this is now is our time to deliver. So I'm super excited about these AI technologies that can help us do more with our data and technology.
Great. Kyle, what do you see happening out there in the marketplace for data AI-enabled tools? What's driving that market? Is it technology? Is it just business demand, technology breakthroughs, new ways to solve old problems? What do you see?
So for me, a lot of this actually comes back to macroeconomics. So obviously there's been a lot of compression the last couple of years. I think that's resulted in a lot more budget scrutiny for a lot of enterprises. And so many of the customers that we're talking to, a lot of what's driving their interest in how much automation can your platform provide, how much can you do automatically, how intelligent is it? The thing that's driving a lot of that interest is I don't want my team to get smaller and I don't want my budget to get smaller, but the expectations of how much I can get done with those same resources keep growing. Because the business wants the data team to be able to accomplish so much, but they don't want to have to scale the resources, proportionately. So the question is always, how does your team, the data team within the enterprise, get more done in a year without having to grow your budget by an enormous amount? So to me, it seems like a lot of the interest is, can we get more efficiency out of the existing folks and resources that we have? And AI is a great lever that helps them make that possible. And again, I think that's driven largely by forces that are outside the direct control of the enterprise.
Yeah, so do more with the same and do a lot more with the same is the objective, and or scale without spending any money. Thank you, boss. Okay, Barzan, how about you? What are you seeing out in the marketplace? What's driving this demand for AI-enabled tools, and is it better solutions, solving old problems? What do you see?
I think a lot of it is really that people wanting to do more with less because of the economic conditions that we're going through. But I think it's also that I think things are back to what I call like a more realistic expectation. Like a few years ago, it was all about growth at whatever cost. People would spend as long as it basically helped their top line. But now, when things are more realistic, people are realizing that, hey, we need to grow, but sustainably. And as a result, people are putting a lot more scrutiny in how much they're spending on things like data infrastructure, data teams, and things of that sort. Like we've seen a massive growth if you just look at the market share of the likes of Snowflake and Databricks. People have been investing a lot in these tools, and because it's so easy to leverage these tools, and people are onboarding more use cases, building more data apps, tapping into more data, combining more data sources. So the cost is going through the roof. So I think there's three aspects to it, I would say. Like one is that, yes, people want to save money, but definitely execs want to have more observability and more visibility and predictability in their budget. A CFO doesn't want to. CFOs traditionally were used to, hey, here's how much I'm going to pay for this piece of software, and then you're not going to come back and ask for more money until next year. Whereas now, with a lot of these data infrastructures and a lot of these SaaS solutions, it's very easy for you to run out of your Snowflake budget or, outspend your AWS or Databricks budget and come back, and they don't get it because it's not something that you see in QuickBooks every month. You only find out when the data team comes back and says, we burned through the credits you had purchased, right? So there's that need for more predictability so they can plan around it. But I think there's also a third component I want to make sure it doesn't go unacknowledged, which is that people have started actually like the Gen AI, and Gen AI has gotten the public's awareness about the actual power of AI. So whether people use Gen AI or not, I think there's more awareness of like what AI can do. So then a lot of people are starting to think that, hey, maybe we could automate, not just to save more money, but we could also enable new applications that were previously not easy to do.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So especially the last point is just like, hey, now maybe this is the art of the possible with these AI tools.
Mhm.
Midi, do you see your budget kind of pop? Do you have apps like Snowflake or others that are online cloud apps that sort of run amok from a cost point of view? Maybe I shouldn't say it in a negative tone. Do you have difficulty managing that spend?
Yeah, we have to be really careful, and like Barzan said, we can drive up the cost. It can sneak up on us really quickly, and if we're not careful about it, we have had that, and we had to scale back, do some root cause analysis, and go back and see, okay, what did we change, what spiked up the prices, and then go back and bring it down. We do build in some buffers, but sometimes it just goes off crazy. But I mean, I love Snowflake. We've been using that for years. I wouldn't part with it, but we have to be very careful about how we use it.
So you're spending an increasing amount of time kind of keeping an eye on it. So you need to observe and then act, so
Absolutely.
to speak.
Yep.
Yeah. So and that fits with what Barzan was saying, and also use the cost awareness. Let's talk about then what's going on with the tools. I mean, we're just completing 2024. What were some of the big advancements? Kyle, your capabilities advanced last year. In what areas and what problems did you find you were able to bring this AI enablement inside these data engineering tools? What did you see happen last year?
Well, I think so. We saw a few things on the customer side. The model that I'm seeing more is that there's a dedicated group that is focused on the art of the possible question. And so there's often a specific budget that's set aside for doing a lot of exploratory projects to see what can be done. And I think Barzan's third point from a couple minutes ago is really salient. I think for a lot of folks at the executive level, ChatGPT and consumer-facing tools gave them an immediate sort of tactical physical connection with Gen AI, they could actually go and use it themselves directly and experience it and see what it was capable of doing. And I think that that is fundamentally different from a lot of other technologies that get introduced into data teams. Is you could have the CEO who's actually gone and used Gen AI for some personal thing, and that gets their head spinning, and they start thinking about, well, what could we be using this for internally at the business? And that's a super unique situation. And I think that's been really important in very rapidly opening up funding to do experimentation with this category of technology to see what's possible with it. I have largely seen that those budgets and those teams are distinct from the core data platform teams. So a lot of the core platform teams that we work with at enterprises, so I'm thinking like a USAA, a Cisco, a Hertz, Zoom, et cetera. Those are distinct teams with distinct budgets and distinct mandates from the core data team. And so I think that's something that maybe was counterintuitive to me and my team at the very beginning, let's say a year ago, 18 months ago. But that's how we've been seeing it play out. In terms of using Gen AI inside our product, I actually have a lot more to share about that in the new year, but don't want to give away too much right now.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Barzan, you guys have had an AI-enabled product, data engineering products in the market for 4 or 5 years now. So you've seen some advancements as well. What are some of the areas where you've seen capabilities advance?
So I think there's two most, from a high level, there's two areas where we really, if I'm just speaking about like what Kibo brought to the market this year, is that I think for the first time, we've really enabled this idea of decoupling application performance from application logic. So traditionally, like one of the most powerful, typically some of the most impactful ideas in software is when you abstract things away, when you decouple things. That's when things start to really speed up. So I think what we've done this year is that we've sort of, in our platform, we've brought this smart query routing to the market, especially for cloud data warehousing technologies such as Snowflake, is that now we're allowing customers to just decouple their application performance from application logic, in the sense that the data team can now just focusing on writing the correct query instead of worrying about, where should I send this query? What's going to be the cost of this query? What's going to be the performance? And then the smart query routing will figure out at runtime how to send every single query to the optimal query. So I think that's been the one we've seen a massive traction for it in the market, because it's just not humanly possible for a data team to make sure if they have 1 million queries, every single one of those queries goes to the optimal warehouse size. So what happens typically is, I call it the watermelon, apple, and cherry kind of analogy, that when you look inside any data warehouse, you see that people are running a bunch of cherries, apples, and watermelons. And it's very expensive in the sense that if a warehouse can run a watermelon, you shouldn't be running cherries in there. And it's also expensive because even if 99% of what's happening there are just cherries, but there's 1% of watermelons, you cannot reduce the size of that warehouse without smushing that watermelon. So it's very daunting for the app developers to like wrap their head around this and in real time figure out what needs to go there. So what happens typically in today's industry is people think about use case or application. Like, hey, this is the BI department. I'm going to give them a medium. This is my ETL small. This is a medium large. But like within that, they can't go beyond that. So now we've been able to sort of leverage AI to be a lot more granular and just shield the end user from this. You say, hey, you just send your queries. You get the impression of a serverless service at a fraction of a cost. And then the second thing that was major this year is that we've actually started exploring using of the use of LLMs for query rewriting. We actually have a publication out there for those who are more academically inclined. It's called the work is called Gen Rewrite, where we're using Gen AI to rewrite queries. And it's interesting how out of the box ChatGPT actually gives you a lot of wrong queries, but with building a little bit of smart logic around it, you can really move the needle.
Great, thank you, Barzan. So, Midi, do you have cherries, apples, and watermelons in your Snowflake?
We have all of that, and sometimes, I don't even know what's bigger than a watermelon. Elephants come in and eat up all of our credits. But yeah, I mean, for me, I think that would be a really good product for us. I mean, the theme of the conversation, I want to be lazy. I don't know. I want me and my team to be as lazy as possible. Be smart lazy, right? That way we can offload some of these high impact but repetitive tasks to AI, and we can focus on bigger and better things. Some of the easy winners in terms of tooling for me has been um, these tools for code enablement tools driven by AI, GitHub Copilot or Cursor AI. We've also seen Snowflake and Databricks launched their AI capabilities, which has been great. I also love data observability tools. Astronomer Airflow is great. Big Eye has been we've been looking at Big Eye as well, and your observability products. So I'm excited for what's been rolled out in 2024 and what's to come in 25.
Kyle, in your company definition, you talk about observability. Barzan mentioned observe what's going on so that he can rewrite the query or route the query properly. Midi says he's using observability tools. Let's spend a minute on observability. Kyle, so what's the big idea behind observability, and what kind of benefits are people seeing?
Yeah, so it's a topic that's borrowed from DevOps. So in DevOps, in site reliability engineering, if you're going to run like large scale complex applications while they're running in real time, you need to understand how they're performing, what's going on. If you have users visiting a page and that page load is 200 milliseconds or 500 milliseconds, and it should be 95 milliseconds or less. Why is that happening? And answering the question of why can get pretty complicated. The same thing is true in a data system. And so if you do not have observability over your data estate, your data pipelines, whatever you want to call it, then when you have an issue with Snowflake performance, why? Is it because somebody dumped a bunch of watermelons in a place that's supposed to have apples? If you don't have any form of observability at all, you don't know how to answer the question because you can't introspect that system and see what's going on inside. It's a fairly broad term. And so I think originally early on, it's been used very heavily in the space of improving data quality, which it certainly helps with. But observability is a very general term, and it enables a lot more than just data quality. And a lot of the observability vendors out there, ourselves included, do focus on quality. But I think to Barzan's point, observability conceptually enables you to understand what's going on with your users that are consuming data out of your system, what's going on with your infrastructure performance, what's going on with warehouse utilization. Those are all problems that have nothing to do with quality, but where observability helps the data team understand in real time what's going on with the total system. My company in particular, we do focus on the quality element, but observability is sort of the thing that underpins that.
And the core concept is, if you don't know what's going on, how do you put the resources into the right place?
That's exactly
right. Now, it seems to me that's the starting point. So, for example, you identify quality problems, but then those need to be fixed, right? So does that bring us to all the new buzzword, agentic AI, to where, okay, so now we've observed the problem, but now we're going to use the AI to actually fix the problem. Barzan, that's an area you've been focused on. Right? Can you talk about that? The step two,
Sure.
Observe and then fix, or observe and then act.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I like that terminology. We actually internally refer to those use cases as observe and report versus observe and act. I think the key is to know what needs to be automated and can be automated. And I think a lot of vendors out there sometimes get it wrong. And I think the ones who have more success are the ones who kind of know what that intersection is. There's things that people don't want automated, and there's things that we all want automated, but the technology is not there. If you try to automate it, you're gonna create a lot of bruises and miss the whole thing. So when it comes to actually acting on it, we have, for example, real-time, or I should say, autonomous real-time warehouse optimization. So the idea was that if you try to, I can tell you what are your most expensive queries. I can tell you, who are your users who are writing the least efficient query, so you can go and pick your fight with them. But at the end of the day, there's a limit. There's an upper bound on how much value you can get out of it, right? So I wrote a blog post about this. I don't know, you guys have probably all read that famous or it got a lot of media attention when there was this whole thing about Instacart, whether they're migrating from Snowflake to Databricks or not. And then there was a long article about how much they've spent internally in manually optimizing their Snowflake pipeline. And I wrote this blog post after that, hey, look, what they've done is that they built a lot of, what vendors like, Big I or Keyboard others are doing in-house. And then at the end of the day, they gave this tooling to all their data teams to do a lot of manual work. But at the end of the day, the manual work that's distributed across the entire company is still manual work, and it's still a lot of waste of manual and human resources. So what we do at Kibo is that we actually have a fully autonomous optimization. Like instead of, because it's just not, first of all, optimal for a human to stare at 1 million performance statistics and say, oh, I think this is the right thing to do right now. Even the most experienced DBA cannot do that. Let's just be honest with ourselves, right? The second part of that,
especially at 3 a.m. in the morning.
Exactly. And then the second thing is that a lot of these optimization opportunities, like what am I going to do? I'm going to page your data engineer at 2 a.m. and say, hey, you know what? Wake up. This warehouse doesn't need to be a large. And then 7 minutes later, actually, now it does need to be large, revert it to its original size, go back to sleep. You're going to miss out on a lot of those things, right? So Kibo automatically does a lot of that stuff. And then it's also, it's not a one-time sort of optimization. Like what's optimal today may not be optimal an hour from now or a day from now or a week from now, because workloads are constantly changing. So we've actually spent a lot of R&D resources and a lot of academic research that's gone into sort of creating a fully autonomous warehouse optimization where you just press a button and then just it starts doing the right thing behind the scene and saving you money.
I've experienced something I think very similar to what Barzan's describing, and this is something that we talk about in our product team as well, which is the phrases that I use for it are when do you just want to give the user leverage versus when do you want to give them intelligence? And a lever is just a lever. It doesn't do anything on its own, but it gives the human being, they pull the lever and they get a lot more effort out than if they were doing it themselves, but it's not making any decisions by itself. And then the question is, when do you want to use a lever and when do you want to give the customer intelligence? And so for us, for example, we do use intelligence on anomaly detection. Mm-hmm. That's a situation where we've got sometimes tens of thousands of monitors running in a customer's environment. And I think same thing Barzan mentioned about looking at a bunch of different statistics about warehouse performance. No human being is going to sit down and crawl through 20,000 different metrics that we've instrumented in somebody's data pipelines. That is where you want to do intelligence. But then there are other situations where the engineer wants control over exactly what the system is going to do. And if you do not give them that control and you say, don't worry about it, we've got a black box and it'll be fine, just trust us, you'll alienate a lot of customers that way very quickly. So I think we've seen the exact same thing.
So Kyle, you would say, what are some examples? You mentioned that Barzan's example with the warehouse optimization, cost optimization, and you mentioned anomaly detection are two areas where the intelligence and go ahead and Barzan's word, observe and act makes sense. What would be are there any other examples that come to mind right away as that fall into that intelligence bucket?
Anomaly detection is one. The other is, again, in order to get all that instrumentation deployed through a large system, you really don't want human beings going through it. I mean, this is the whole problem with traditional data quality rules. You don't want humans to go through and say, okay, in this Oracle database, these are all the things we need to check for. In this IBM DB2 database, these are all the things we need to check for. In this schema in Snowflake, these are all the things we need to check for. So an example of applying intelligence and automation in the deployment and the collection of all those monitoring signals would be have a business user point at an analytics dashboard, and then we'll use data lineage to identify every single column all the way upstream that ultimately feeds that particular analytic dashboard. And then we will automatically recommend all the instrumentation needed to answer a business question, which is this dashboard healthy right now or not? And you can eliminate the manual labor of having to go through the whole system and write, sometimes thousands of data quality rules. So that's another example where I think automation can create a lot of leverage.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Mehdi, from your point of view, you're talking about you definitely want to be smart, use the tools intelligently. Are you getting to the point now where you're doing observability and acting automatically, or where the intelligent decision, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, definitely what some of the things that Kyle and Barzan said resonates with me, right? So I don't want my vendors and the tools to be intelligent about everything. I want give me 3 things that I need to go and fix, and I'll focus on those first. But also, I think there's like with AI, I think there's with all of these key intelligence built into data engineering tools, it helps us pay off a lot of tech debt and load off some of the repetitive tasks, such as observability, such as things that we'll have to do every day again and again to keep our costs low, to keep our machine going, and focus on high value items, such as, hey, we want to deliver intelligence and bring in data at the right time from all the sources as much as possible, and also deliver the insights and data to the right people at the right time, to the right place. I think that's hyper personalization. That's mainly my focus in 2025 and beyond.
Right. So any data engineering activity that's high volume and then certain areas that are high impact. So, for example, Snowflake cost management, or the quality of the dashboard that the CEO gets.
Yep.
Those are kind of, maybe that's a filter that people could use, data engineering leaders could use to kind of decide where they want to focus and make investments. What's coming in 2025? I know, Kyle, you don't want to give away the store, but maybe you could talk at the macro trend level. What kinds of things you see as dynamics, so to speak?
I think there's 2 that I would want to point out. One is, at least this is more localized to my space that we operate in, is there are, at this point, like, the observability concept's been around for a few years. It's been adopted at the enterprise level. It's not just an early adopter thing anymore. And so a lot of companies are asking, like, observing is great, but what are we actually going to do about it? And I think there is an opportunity in our space to strike the right balance between recommending or being able to take action for the customer at 2 a.m. while the engineer's asleep, versus that potentially causing problems, and where do you want to give them control. And if it's just a workflow builder that says this pipeline stopped running, restart Airflow or rerun that job or whatever you need to do, and it's very, very, very manual, there's some value there, but not a ton. If it's completely black box on the other end of the spectrum, I can't imagine any enterprise that would actually leverage that. If you say, I'm going to let this model make decisions autonomously in the middle of the night about what to do with my data pipeline, probably not going to go there either. So I think there will be, you'll see a lot of different variations of somewhere on that gradient from data observability vendors in how do you start to take action on those observability signals. And you might see a couple different attempts at different places on that spectrum. And it'll be interesting to see, where does the market think the right balance sits. I think the other one is outside of our market, and I think it's consolidation. I think a lot of people are looking at consolidation. I think there's a lot of folks, I mean, I'd love to hear Mitty's opinion, but I've met a lot of data teams where they're just tired of POCing 5 different vendors to plug the same hole in their data stack. On the one hand, like the number of choices out there today is great. On the other hand, maybe there's a little too much. So I think there's a consolidation thing that might come in 2025.
Got it. That makes sense. Barzan, as you look to 2025 on a macro trend point of view, where do you see the data engineering tools, the AI enablement happening, the adoption increasing?
I think that's a good question. I think consolidation is something we've been seeing actually even in 2024. I think that's something that is going to continue, as Kyle pointed out. I think consolidation is a pretty big force in the market, and that's why you see a lot of the cloud vendors just basically getting a lot of additional tools added to their tech stack and helping their customers with different, without mentioning, for example, Amazon Redshift is a really good system, but a lot of people are using it because it's AWS and so on and so forth. Now, in terms of what I think is going to be a noticeable difference compared to 2024, my biggest bet is that it's going to be data teams. It's going to be more data teams, and the execs who oversee that are going to be having a lot, not considerably, comparatively, with respect to 2024. I think there's going to be a lot more buy versus build. I think one of the biggest challenges that a lot of engineering teams, and I think Mitty is probably the exception. People who can see the value of, hey, you know what, I'm just gonna, if that tool is available, I'm gonna go and leverage it and make my team productive. Because, and I can say this as an engineer by training myself, that engineers are excited about building things, right? Whereas it's not always in the best interest of their company. The funny example I remember, there was this customer. They were in a digital marketing space, and their data team, we basically have a whole team of machine learning and database PhDs and years of academic research, peer-reviewed publications, patent, to be able to sort of automate this thing. And then they looked at it and they said, actually, we've been thinking of doing this as a side project ourselves in-house. And I was like, it took this many PhDs 3 years to build this. And these guys, first of all, think they can actually do this in-house, number one. Number two, they think it's a good idea for them to build IP in this space for a company that should be they're in digital marketing space. They should be thinking about how to grow their business. And number three, the thing that really cracked me up, that they were thinking of doing this as a side project, maybe over the weekends, right? But that's more of an extreme example. But I think what's going to happen is, as execs become more AI and data savvy, I think they're going to be able to sort of make a better judgment of when it's actually not in their best interest to build. They're going to, have more tendency to buy. And the second thing, which I think is a similar trend, is that I've noticed that the buyers in this space, at least in our space, in the, observability and infra optimization space, are becoming a lot more technical. When I go to trade shows, even execs who approach me now, they're asking a lot more technical questions, which I think has to do with the number of vendors that are in this space. And my third prediction of what's going to happen next year is that I think the biggest challenge for companies who actually leverage AI nowadays is that everyone is claiming that they're using AI, and that's really crowding the market. I think what's going to happen is that dust is going to settle a little more, and then those solutions that actually work, that actually leverage AI, that credibility is going to start paying off. I think one of the biggest challenges we're facing is not building an autonomous technology, which is hard. But I think what's harder is to sort of gain the adoption and earn the trust of customers that, hey, it's not a black box thing. There's all these safeguards in place. You can, determine where is it that you want automated, what are the parameters, what are the SLAs that you want to be respected to. Be respected by the AI and whatnot. But I think those are the three things that I think are going to change next year, or I should say I hope are going to change or continue to improve over the next 12 months.
So kind of summarizing a little bit at this point before I go over to Mitty, more agentic, intelligent automation built in to these tools, consolidation amongst the vendors who provide these capabilities, data teams recognizing that it's better to buy than build. Buyers who are more technical to begin with, and then a kind of a rebalancing of what we would call AI-enabled capabilities, AI inside versus AI apps to achieve the more app-level business directly, and just take advantage of the AI inside, so to speak, because you get that automatically. Mehdi, as you think about your 2025 and some of the trends Kyle and Barzan talked about, what are you thinking about in this domain and areas you'd like to add to?
Yeah, no, definitely buy versus build has been a really big conversation in our company as well. I think the way that I think about and my current leadership thinks about this is what's our core competency? Are we a technology company, or are we in the in the business of serving our customers through our products and services? So if we can come from there, I think the buy versus build becomes more easier, and that will enable what's best for the company, decisions based off of what's best for the company versus just having PhDs on my team, doesn't really give me a leeway to go and build things just for the sake of it, right? That's definitely a good point. In terms of the other points that they made, yes, I mean, every company wants to be an AI company, and my CTO and I, shout out to Mark Conlin, our CTO, but we don't want to be an AI company, right? We want to leverage our vendors, AI capabilities of our vendors, to gain efficiencies through in our workloads, in our cost efficiencies, and see on top of it, can we see any AI capabilities that we can build in-house that can help our product, that can leverage what we can do to leverage AI to provide better value for our customers. So we have to think all of it and not become an AI company in all of these aspects, right? So that's kind of what I'm thinking. For 2025, primarily, my strategy is to democratize data more, make data more tangible. I think there are tools that are coming up, that AI-based data cataloging, that'll make data more tangible for business users. For example, they can go to the data catalog or data dictionaries and start asking questions about data which they didn't have access to before. So I think that's really what I'm focused on, and also hyper personalization that I said before. How can I get the right data at the right time to the right place for better value?
Great. Well, value is key term, and Kyle started this by saying, an economic driving more with the same kind of thinking. Let's talk about the benefits of these approaches. Barzan, what kinds of benefits are you seeing in your customers when they adopt this AI-enabled approaches to data engineering and their observe and act kind of methodology?
The observe and act methodology, I think it's just pure savings, right? Like, you basically free up budget. The first thing is you free up budget that basically you can invest in other parts of your business to good use. You're not, and then we call this no-brainer savings, like a money that, you're still getting the same amount of work done. You didn't have to work for it. It was fully automated. You didn't have to sacrifice performance for it. So why not? It's the money you find on the floor, and then just pick up that money. And that's why we changed our pricing model from day one to, instead of a subscription fee, we just charge customers a percentage of whatever we save them. That, hey, if we don't save you money, you don't have to pay us. But if we save you X dollars, we take a percentage of it, and it's a money you wouldn't have otherwise. So just pure savings is one thing. The second thing is predictability and visibility. There's a lot of stuff people don't want automated because the biggest limitations of AI is that it doesn't know your specific business requirements your domain experts do know that, so that we basically we use AI to surface the sources of inefficiency, our suggested insights and recommendations, and then they can apply their own judgment and their business requirements to decide which of those they're going to do. For example, we're seeing that this table keeps getting updated every single day, but no one has read from it, for the past 3 months. You're not just wasting storage, but you're also wasting compute. But we can't just go ahead and delete it because, hey, maybe this is for compliance or archival or those sorts of purposes. We don't know that. The user knows that. Our job is to surface it to them. So that's the second thing. And the third one is just really allowing, being a force multiplier for the engineering resources. So people are able to get a lot more done instead of just, staying at queries and trying to optimize queries manually on figuring out how to reduce costs, figuring out is this query going to perform or not. They're going to focus on what, Millie was talking about. Like, hey, here's our core competency. Here's where we need to go as a business. I'm going to spend my time on this. So that opportunity cost of, running your infrastructure is not going to be there. I think the main benefit is if we free up engineering resources then in that case.
So 3 things: more savings, for example, a lower Snowflake bill, predictability and visibility, and then this force multiplier, more productivity. Kyle, what about you? What do you see the benefits are people achieving in applying your product to things like observability or into quality or anomaly detection, et cetera?
Yeah. The main goal is catch more things before they end up impacting the company. That's always number one. Is data team needs to know what's going on before it has business impact. So that's a function of your ability to catch issues. So for example, if I can, for a customer, enable, let's say, 50,000 data quality monitors in their environment, and I can do that in a few hours instead of humans manually writing rules, you've got hard savings in terms of the hours spent to instrument the system. Then the next one is, once you catch a problem, can you get it resolved quickly enough? So we track mean time to resolution for our customers as a key metric. And so we see over the course of the first year using the product, we can get that down by like 80%. So if it used to take you 10 hours to resolve a data quality issue on average, we can get that down to 2 hours or less. And so that reduces the blast radius when those problems do occur. The hard one to quantify has always been risk reduction. So I've heard some customers refer to observability as like an insurance policy. And the idea there gets tricky because if we prevented a problem from occurring, how much savings did we generate? And unfortunately, it's not a fun exercise to do, but we often ask customers when we first meet them, when was the last major problem that you had and how expensive was it for the company? And you have to kind of look retroactively at how bad have things gotten in the past, because you're looking at a counterfactual. Like, I can't tell you what would have happened, if this problem had made it into production. Nobody really can. But what you can do is look historically and say, okay, you had to report to the street that there was a loss of this many dollars that was associated with issues with your data system. So that's the one that's harder to quantify, but is ultimately, like, I think, the higher level thing that folks get out of observability once they've implemented it.
So hard savings, we talked about that in several angles. I like this mean time to resolution, in either when it is something that has human intervention, or mean time to resolution when it's fully automated is, which is a great improvement. Risk reduction. It's interesting that you talked about that from, we always talk about fear and greed, right? You talked a little bit about the greed. How much did that save? I would think, if I'm a MIDI, I'm thinking about that from the other side, the fear side. I don't want to get fired. So, if you can prevent these problems, you're my job insurance policy, so to speak. But anyway, that's just me. Maybe I'm
don't get fired isn't a great way to start a sales pitch. I wouldn't go that route.
Or maybe it is a great way to start sales pitch, right? So yeah,
how every security vendor pitches their product.
So go ahead, Mehdi. Why did that one resonate with you?
No, on the same line, like, I don't want to be yelled at. That's my goal, right? Hey, something broke, and the business users identify it and then come to me and say, hey, this dashboard is broken, and then it backtrack into the data engineering team saying, oh, we didn't realize that there was something broken, right? So I want to be the first that to know when things break, so potentially we can fix it before it goes to the business and I don't get yelled at or get fired. uh, I think there are some cool stuff coming up. Some of the vendors are solving for this. Astronomer Airflow is a really good tool that moves from proactive monitoring and observability. They're moving towards predictive monitoring and observability. So basically, they're saying, how long does this pipeline typically take, and are there any bottlenecks today? And they'll let us know, ping us, and say, "Hey, your pipeline is going to be busted in 2 hours." I'm like, "Yes, and thank you." Then nobody has to know, and I'll go and fix it. So those are really good things that I'm really excited for. For our internal customers and for my team, basically.
Well, it's interesting. In a sense, you're talking about you're not going to get fired, but there's an opportunity cost to this constant noise of problems. And it's preventing you from doing the sexy new things, the high business impact things, because you're this busy fool chasing, today's whack-a-mole, today's whatever problem is popping up. And just to the extent that you can bring some control and some ability to prioritize intelligently your resources.
Yeah,
Because
100%.
we're talking about limited resources.
100%. We want our data engineers and data teams to build data products and see if our internal data is valuable to other external customers. So we want to move towards becoming a revenue generating unit versus just managing pipelines or building machine learning models every day, day in and day out.
This is also a question I ask data leaders when I talk to them: is what percentage of your team's time do you spend on toil? And toil being, I did the task, it took care of the immediate problem, but it didn't actually generate any future value. All it did was eliminate something that was not good. And so fixing a data quality issue, one issue is a toil moment, versus modifying your system to prevent future issues is not toil, because you're generating future value from that. But another example would be responding to a ticket. I think Midi mentioned like business users using a catalog and natural language search kind of thing. Implementing that catalog as a shield against the team having to manually respond to Slack messages or Jira tickets or repetitive questions, the effort put into implementing that shield, if you will, that's not toil, because you're generating future value by answering all those questions that otherwise are toil because the team has to manually answer them. So I always ask them, where do you feel like that balance is right now? Is it 20% toil? Is it 40% toil? Even worse. So
Barzan, you're smiling. You said toil. So
I think that's true. I think there's a lot of time and effort that gets wasted on firefighting drills or fire drills. And sometimes you see, oh, something's broken, and sometimes people look into it and nothing was broken. It was just a false alarm. That's definitely a loss of productivity. But sometimes, even if it's something broken, obviously just figuring out, diagnosing a root, causing it, fixing is a big problem. But I was smiling because I think that's exactly the opportunity we have ahead of us, right? If you think about traditionally, I mean, this is not new. Like, where do you want to leverage AI? Whenever there's the task that you're trying to automate has three qualities, right? It's complex, it's tedious, and it has to be done and if it has to be done in real time, right? You're not going to wake someone up in the middle of the night and say, cut access to this particular suspicious activity, right? Like, you need to be able to act fast. That's one of the reasons, for example, ad placement and ad networks were some of the earliest adopters of AI. But the nice thing that's been added is that on top of basically something that's complex, meaning a human cannot really judge what's the optimal thing at that moment, it's tedious, a human doesn't want to do it, or it's very time consuming and it needs to be done in real time. Previously, it used to be, well-defined problems, things that you had a workflow for. But now with Gen AI, you can even apply these three things to things that are even open-ended. So I think if data teams can figure out what are the things that fall into these three categories, and like get the right tool, or stitch out the right tools, or ideally buy one tool that can do all of that stuff. I think that's where you get a lot of value and free up a lot of productivity potential.
Well, today's session was real time, although you could watch it later. Hopefully not tedious, and we tried to make the complex simpler. So great job, everyone. I'm going to close it out with an opportunity for each of you guys to talk about if viewers wanted to get involved with your company or reach out to you. What's the best next step? Kyle, let's start with you.
Yeah, so you can email me. My email is kyle@bigeye.com. I love talking to customers. It's one of the reasons that I started a company. So you're welcome to email me. Happy to chat. If you want to learn more about the product, you can go to bigeye.com. You can request a demo there. We also have some videos on YouTube if you just want to get like a visual overview of what the product looks like. But whichever of those channels is most interesting to you, happy to engage through any of those.
Barzan?
Same, like my email is my first name, barzan@kibo.ai. If you want to, try out the product for free, you can go to kibo.ai. But, I would say if you're using any cloud data warehousing, Snowflake or others in any capacity, you're interested in reducing spend or improving your team's productivity or getting, observability and visibility, you can give the product a try. Or, if you're just interested in collaboration or chatting about whatever AI use case, I can put my professor hat back on, and I'm always excited about having those sorts of conversations with people.
Great, thank you. Midi, tell us about conversations with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, check out our company and product, Legal Shield. Again, subscription-based legal services. I also have a shameless plug for my podcast, Data Democracy,
Okay.
where I talk to leaders across industries about data and AI. My goal is to make data and AI more accessible to businesses of all sizes. So check out my podcast on LinkedIn and YouTube and all places you can get podcasts.
All right, Barzan and Kyle, you may be on a future episode.
Love it.
Thank you. And then everyone's on LinkedIn, and you can also find this, well, you've probably already found this video on YouTube. And of course, starting next week, we have the Insight Jam Live, as I mentioned, 25 different sessions, all expert-led, similar to this. Key topics, relevant stuff for 2025. And with that, I'll close it out. Thank you, gentlemen. It was a great job today, and hope to have you back in the future. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks
so much for having us. Bye.